The Southern African Development Community, SADC, heads of state this week resolving to indefinitely extend its military mission in northern Mozambique. The mission was deployed in July of last year to neutralise a terrorist threat in the country's oil-rich Cabo Delgado region. The Mozambican army is being assisted by troops from South Africa, Botswana, Angola, Lesotho and Tanzania. For now, there is no telling how much longer the conflict will last. Let's bring in counter-terrorism expert Jasmine Opperman, who joins us via our video link this morning. It's great to talk to you on such an incredibly important issue, Jasmine, because we want to know, is it worth our while and is it benefiting the region we are trying to help by extending this mission?
Michelle, good morning. Good morning to your viewers. Yes, we have to do this. I know the cost is high. We're looking at $29 million for an extension. But we have to realize that there are two threats we are facing to the region. One is the Cabo Delgado insurgency, which is showing continuous and persistent levels of attacks. Two, we are countering and trying to counter the Islamic State in finding an institutionalized presence in the region as far as Uganda. So the soldiers and their presence will not lead to a solution, but we need to enable stability. And their deployment now in drastic need of the support that has to be given to our soldiers deployed.
Okay, so let's talk about that support. You say that this is a mission that must be extended. We know that to date 11 soldiers have been killed, and that includes one SANDF member. When we talk about having to extend this mission and supporting our military, are they getting that kind of support? Do they have the intelligence and the means to gather intelligence while they are doing this work?
And that is where the problem comes in, Michelle. There needs to be synergy. There needs to be cooperation. Remember, Rwanda is also present. There are tensions between Rwanda, Mozambique, and Summit. There's not enough intelligence liaison. The soldiers are struggling with basic logistics, such as food, such as ammunition, such as air support, to helicopters, to our special forces, and expect them to work in the most difficult environment in Cabo Delgado is truly leaving them vulnerable. Boots on the ground is not the answer. Support to the boots on the ground that will enable an environment to find a solution is the key. And I'm sad to say we are leaving the soldiers with minimum capabilities, and that leaves them vulnerable. And yet, let's give it to our soldiers. They are making a difference.
So the 29 million rand that is being spent on this extension, the extension of this mission, Jasmine, if you're saying that the soldiers are left vulnerable to the extent that they don't have the tools at their disposal to do the work they've been sent there to do, what are we spending the 29 million rand on?
That's a good question. Deploying soldiers is expensive. Counterinsurgency warfare is not short. Do not expect after 3 months a return. Do not expect a return within the next 2 to 3 years unless something drastically changes. But when we are spending $29 million, Michelle, and this is key to understand, it is just sufficient to keep the current capacity in Cabo Delgado. Do not expect an expansion in numbers. This is how expensive it is. And government, in utilizing these funds, governments in the region, needs to account for how this money is used in support of these military operations. Because clearly, what is being given to them today, as we sit here, is not enough to make them proactive and proactively countering this increased cell attacks we've seen over the last 3 to 4 weeks.
Sorry, just to clarify those numbers, Jasmine, I think I said rand. Was that an error? It was meant to be $29 million, which this extension is costing us?
US dollars.
It's dollars. Now, the initial deployment of 3 months cost South Africa, and this is in rands, 984 million rand. That's right.
That is correct, and that money has already been used and utilized.
The extension now, it's indefinite as far as I can understand, but it will be reviewed every 3 months?
That is spot on. That is correct, Michelle. So after 3 months review, and I'm sorry to bring the bad news, looking at the situation deteriorating, looking at the volatility, looking at the expansion of the conflict theater, it is going to become more difficult. Don't expect our soldiers to return after 3 months. It is simply not possible.
So if we take a look back and see just how successful this deployment has been to date, since the initial deployment, Jasmine, what would be some of the criteria that you would judge whether this is working?
The first thing we need to get out of our politicians must stop doing is this persistent winning narrative. There is no winning narrative in a counter-insurgency warfare. We need to create sustained stability whereby people that return simply do not flee again in 3 weeks because of the insurgents moving around. So we have to look at how we can enable enable an environment where people will feel safe and secure. Not to say that there will be no more attacks. It takes one bullet to create fear and sweep the winning narrative off the table. So we need to be realistic in our communication, in what we expect. But the final criteria is how can we maintain an environment where cells can't move, where cells can't access food and supplies, and where it becomes more and more difficult. We have to break that momentum.
I want to again just talk about the cost of this deployment specifically for South Africa, Jasmine, because if we assume that every 3 months it's going to cost South Africa 984 million rand, that would mean that South Africa has already spent almost 2 billion rand on this deployment. By April of this year, it would have cost the country almost 3 billion rand. What do you tell South Africans, Jasmine, about this kind of expenditure? I mean, we know we're not an island here in South Africa, and what happens on the continent does impact us directly, but it's a lot of money.
Michelle, just for clarity, the $29 million is for the whole regional deployment and not only related to South Africa. But that is where the problem comes in. If we are not going to get funding from somewhere, we are going to run short. And it is going to have a spillback in terms of the domestic environments we find ourselves in Southern Africa, with already decreasing socioeconomic realities. But funding will have to be made available from some foreign actors. The UN, highly unlikely. It's not being seen as a peacekeeping operation. Take Rwanda, 2,000 soldiers. The economy is smaller than that of Mozambique, but there is a funding stream taking place from France that enables them to be there. So SADC is in dire need, and I think this is what the President Ramaphosa has been referred to for economic and international support to the SADC mission. It is crucial that we get that financial support.
Jasmine Opperman, let me thank you for your time this morning, giving us some clarity on the situation there in the Cabo Delgado region and our own deployment. As SADC and South Africa's part in it, that deployment now extended by at least another 3 months. Jasmine is a counter-terrorism expert, giving us that context this morning.